Welcome to Bloomberg Power Players, the series that talks to the most influential figures in the world of sport about their rise, the success of their sport, and what the future holds. Today we speak to one of the greatest goalkeepers football has ever seen. He made 632 appearances for European giants Bayern Munich, winning 8 league titles, 6 German Cups, and the coveted Champions League. He's earned 86 caps for Germany and won the European Championships, making him a living legend for the German fans, without any doubt. Nowadays, King Kahn, the safe pair of hands who captained his club and country, has been entrusted with Bayern Munich to lead the club into a glorious future as CEO. A great and difficult task, no less, with European football facing many controversies and changes. Tom McKenzie sat down with the humble legend.
Looking back on an extraordinary career, 8 titles, of course, with the Bundesliga, the UEFA Cup, the Champions League, 2002 being named the Golden Ball at the World Cup, 86 caps for your country, 46 as captain. How do you look back on what is indisputably an extraordinary career?
That's a long time ago. If you're talking about my career, I think now I retired 2008. So now it's unbelievable. It's 14 years now. I remember very well. I played my Bundesliga match against VfL Bochum. Because our first goalkeeper, he played very bad, and in the second half the coach came to me and said, "Now Oliver, go in the second half, you play." And from this point on, I think I was 22, 23 years. From this point on, I played a lot of Bundesliga games, and everything goes the right way.
Yeah, you dominated. It was a storied career. Anything rank as a regret as you look back on that career, whether it was missing out on World Cup victory in 2006. Do you look at that as a regret?
No, I don't. I don't regret anything because I had so many great moments, so many emotional moments. I played 14 years for FC Bayern Munich, winning so much titles, German championships, cup titles, also the Champions League title. And I was in the final of the World Cup 2002. But I think in my life, nothing would be different if I had won the World Cup title. You know, it would be great. But I think I live very well, and I'm very satisfied.
Was it always obvious to you that you would transition from the pitch to business? Was that always in the back of your mind?
Yes, when I retired 2008, it was quite clear for me to do something totally different, because I think there's a lot. There are a lot of other things in life, not only football. But then, when I retired 1 year later, I became an offer. I became an offer from FC Schalke 04, another Bundesliga club, and they wanna hire me as manager. But so I said, no, I don't want to do that. I think I want to make different experiences in business. I founded my own companies, made experience in business, started studying again after I retired. So it was clear for me that I want to found my own company and build businesses around my own brand. So that was very clear for me. But on the other hand, I worked as an expert for the German TV for football, and so I stayed close with this job. I stayed close to the football business, and I think this was the right way for me to develop myself further.
And what do you bring as a leader to Bayern? What are the skills that you bring to this club?
I'm very team-oriented. I want that people can participate in everything we are doing here. Especially our fans. And I think this was a different way of leading Bayern Munich as it was before, but it was my way, and believe me, this was not an easy process. After such a long time with Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and Uli Hoeneß, and they were so successful, so everything was looking at me and saying, what is Oliver Kahn? What is he? What is he doing now? What will he do? And this was a little bit change of culture. My job is that Bayern Munich is as successful as they were in the past.
For some players, it can be difficult when they leave the pitch. They hang up their boots, not competing on a weekly basis. So what motivates you? What drives you?
The change. I think I knew I was a good goalkeeper, you know.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah. But I want to be not only a good goalkeeper at the end of my life. I want to look back and say, yeah, what a good goalkeeper. But I was then, when I retired, I was 38, 39, and then. So normally other persons or people or managers, their career starts in this age. And that was very challenging for me. I remember sitting at home, and it was around 9 o'clock, Champions League started. And I was sitting on my sofa, looked at the TV, and I was getting a little bit, nervous. And then I had to go out running at 12 o'clock in the night, to compensate, to compensate this adrenaline, all the pressure you have, and you like it to have that. And suddenly it's all over.
What is your long-term vision for Bayern?
We want to be the most exciting club. We have not the opportunity to engage with investors, for example. So this is Bayern Munich is similar to Real Madrid or similar to FC Barcelona. Is a club where the members have the majority of everything, and that's totally different to clubs, for example, like in England, where investors where investors are the number one.
Does that 50+1 model, does it hold you back, though, from competing against Premier League clubs, against PSG, for example?
We in Bayern Munich, in our regulations, we have 70+1. So it's now we have Audi, Adidas, and Allianz, and they have 25%. So we have around 5%, which we could give to another company. So we can only give 30%, and maybe that could be a disadvantage in the future. And because of that, we have not the opportunity to engage with investors. If you compare the value of the broadcasting rights in Germany to the value of the broadcasting rights in England, there's also a huge difference. So the competitive advantage between England and Germany is huge. But on the other hand, Bayern Munich is very, very successful. So as a result, we can say we are overperforming year per year in comparison to clubs who have the opportunity of investors and who have this much more of the value of the broadcasting rights.
And you talk about that culture, and I wonder how that culture then played into the decision by Bayern, and you weren't CEO at the time, not to get involved in any way, the only elite club not to get involved with the failed Super League plan. What do you make of that decision? What went into that? Does the Super League come back? What do you make of that whole saga?
No, we were totally convinced that this format, which was introduced, I think, 1.5 years or 2 years ago, this was not something which we are aligned with, or which we can align ourselves with that format. Also, our fans, as I said, Bayern Munich is a very traditional club, and we always said we stick totally to the German Bundesliga. And now we have this new format, we call it post 24, the new Champions League. The new Champions League format will be launched. I think this will also be a big change. And there you don't have a Super League, but first time Champions League format 2024 will be a league format. So this is I think this is an interesting change. And I didn't understand these guys, who came and wanna introduce this new Super League format, because I'm convinced if you want to change something, then try to change things within the system, within the system of ECA and UEFA, but not from outside the system. So people coming from outside and said, hey guys, this is a new format. Do you want to participate? And we were like, no, not at all. This is against all our convictions. This is against all what our fans are thinking. So for us, it was clear from the first moment that we don't want to stick to this Super League format.
And you think that format is dead?
Not stick, sorry. That we don't,
yeah.
That's the wrong
Consider,
word.
maybe.
Yeah.
And you think it's dead, it's not coming back?
No, I don't think so.
Coming up, tackling Bayern's Bundesliga dominance. We talk to Oliver Kahn about that and how he thinks German football needs to change.
The German Bundesliga can be a very, very attractive product in the future.
What is sport without the competition? The adrenaline, the pressure, the excitement, that's what drives the players on the pitch, and it captivates millions of fans who watch. However, since 2012, Oliver Kahn's Bayern Munich have dominated the Bundesliga. They've won every single year. So has that domination robbed the game of competition and ultimately its beauty? Tom McKenzie put that proposition to Oliver as to whether he's ready to level things up.
You touched on the dominance. I mean, just unquestionable dominance of Bayern on the Bundesliga. 10 consecutive title wins, and sometimes you win with three games to go, 3 matches to play. Sometimes you win with 6 or 7. That dominance, is it good though for German football, Oliver?
Yeah, it's two-sided.
Yeah.
Yes. On the one hand, we like that because we won the every year we have the chance to win the German Bundesliga, but we are discussing that at the moment. We are discussing that deeply, with the German Federation, with the DFL. There are a lot of discussions going on. How can we enhance the competitive balance in the German Bundesliga? But I think at this season, it's very close, or it was very close because we won our 4 or 5 last games. But I think this season it's very close. There's not much difference between us, the first and the 4th or 5th. Though things are going in the right way. If you look at Leipzig, for example. Leipzig is a very great team. They are further developing. Borussia Dortmund, always playing on the highest level. So we are open. For discussions.
Yeah, it sounds like you accept that it does need to be more competitive, to be attractive, to be able to sell the brand, sell the story, sell the Bundesliga overseas, particularly.
Yeah, because I took part in so many great finals or last games of the German Bundesliga. If I remember, I think it was 2001 when we played our last game with Bayern Munich in Hamburg, and we need a draw to become German champion. And I think it was the 88th minute, and Hamburg, they made the 1-0. And I looked at Stefan Effenberg and said, hey, Stefan, we had 4 more minutes. So come on, let's go 4 minutes. And then we made the 1-1 in the 94th minute of this game, on the 34th match day. It was the last match day in the German Bundesliga. And these are the greatest moments you can have in a career. So believe me, I'm a big fan of a very exciting competition. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's brilliant. I love that. I love that colour. And it was clearly very visceral for you. And look, you talked about financing. So to go for that very visceral moment on the pitch to the question of financing, we know that the Bundesliga is in conversation with private equity about media rights. Do you have a view on that? Do you think the Bundesliga has done a good enough job in selling the proposition around the value of the media rights of this league?
No, if we compare the value of the international media rights, I think if you compare the value of the German Bundesliga, I think we are around international media rights of the German Bundesliga, we are around 200, 250 million. If you compare that to the Premier League, I think in their new cycle, their new contract cycle, I think they are over 2 billion, if I'm right.
Yeah.
And so their international, the value of the international rights of the Premier League is now higher than the value of the national Premier League rights. It's 2 to 2.1. So you ask me if we did a good job, I say no, we don't make a good job if we look at the media rights of the international broadcasting rights. But I think now we will change. And as you said before, we are discussing also the investors model. If an investor should engage in the German Bundesliga as we see it, for example, in I think in France. It's also discussed in Spain. And yeah, we are discussing that. But the most important thing is, if you engage with an investor in the German Bundesliga, I think this investor should help to develop the Bundesliga product, especially in the international context, to make our product better. And I think this is the most important point. And I think if we can find a solution there, I'm convinced that the German Bundesliga can be a very, very attractive product in the future.
Coming up, Oliver Kahn discusses the challenges in introducing innovations in football and player salaries. Welcome back to Bloomberg Power Players. Technology has left nothing untouched, and that includes the great game of football. From watching the game to how you play it. This is a time of change. Now, while some fans debate endlessly whether the latest VAR technology has made for fairer play, others can't get enough of women's football with its recent boom in popularity. Tom McKenzie talks tech with Oliver Kahn, discussing the changing face of football from VAR to VR.
You talked about your desire to change and evolve and adapt. Is football good at adapting, at changing, at evolving?
I'm not really sure. Football is very traditional. It's so deeply rooted in the culture that changes are very hard. Now we have the VAR, the video assistant referee, and this was really an innovation, a huge innovation in football. We are discussing every time. Fans are discussing, no, we don't want to have it. Yeah, it's very good. So it's very hard to establish innovations in football. But maybe that's not so bad, because it's a very easy game. It's a very simple game, and let it be. Let it be so simple and easy.
And you talked about VAR. What about virtual reality, augmented reality? How do you think those kind of technologies might change the way that we consume and connect with?
Yeah, absolutely. If I look my kids, for example, how they consume or how they view a game, I think it's totally different. They were playing on the console. They played games like Barcelona against Bayern Munich, or Barcelona against Man United, or Man City, and then they came to me and said, "Oh, now I want to go in the stadium." So it's very important, how I think conflate is the right word, how these different worlds of virtual world, the digital world, and the physical world, how it conflates, and this is a good example. Then they play, they are in their digital and virtual world, and now they want to go in the real world and see the game.
The women's team, Bayern Frauen, founding members of the Bundesliga Frauen as well, the women's league. They've been involved for about 50 years. They founded about 50 years ago. Have you been surprised by how slow other European clubs and European football has been to embrace women's football?
Absolutely. I think we have a long tradition in our women's team. We founded the first women teams 50 years ago, and for us it's a very important team, and we make no difference from the importance between our men's team and our women's team, and now we see the development. You see the European Championship. We also saw the reach of the games. I think in Germany we had around 18 million people watching the games during the European Championship. Though that's massive, that's huge. And a few months ago, first time our women's team played in the Allianz Arena, and we had around 20 to 25,000 people there. And therefore, it's a very important part of our club strategy to develop our women's football team.
And are you prepared to invest more in the women's team?
Absolutely. It's not, it's not easy. You have to make a difference between the national teams and the world or the European Cups. There you always have a huge audience. But if you look at for example, the Women's Bundesliga, it's not so easy to bring people to the games, But we think it will develop. It will develop in the future, and that's why we invest. We invest strategically in women's football.
What more do you think needs to be done to address discrimination, racism in football?
I think it's one of our huge and great values in Bayern Munich is inspiration of people. One of our great values is tolerance, and for us it's we had different projects running. We had, for example, the Reds against racism. So we have so many projects running where we want to underline our clear value and zero tolerance against racism.
Okay. Final question. If there was one rule, one thing that you could change in football, in this sport, in this industry, what would it be, Oliver?
One rule, one thing I could change, then it would be a salary cap. That's what comes into my mind.
Yeah. Can you expand on that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Because I think the development, we talked about this development of salaries in football. I think people, they can't understand, our fans, they can't understand it anymore, how high or how far this should go in the future. And now we have this also starting around 2024, 2025, the new from the UEFA, the new financial sustainability regulations. We have the financial fair play, and now we have the financial sustainability regulations. And I think there will be hopefully a big change concerning this salary. That we could slow down a little bit the development of the salaries, because for everyone this should be fine. And I think the players, they own a lot of money, So, but to slow down a little bit would be a great thing.
Oliver Kahn, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you too.
Oliver Kahn, one of football's most admired veterans on how to improve the game. Next time on Power Players, another heart-to-heart where we explore the world of sport and speak to some of the most influential figures in the business.